Welcome to PandaAudioBooks, the perfect place for a huge collection of fantasy novels. If you enjoy my content and want to support my work, a small contribution via PayPal is greatly appreciated. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell to stay updated with our latest audiobook chapters. Chapter 851, Black Blade. When the elder devil heard this, he squinted eyes in surprise as Han Li hadn't displayed the slightest fury. He swept his gaze several times past the sword blur in front of Han Li, the purple flame bird and the blood devil sword before he gloomily stared at Han Li once more. Han Li silently returned the stare and the thunderstorm wings slowly unfolded from his back as magic power began to quickly circulate throughout his body. At that moment, a huge explosion sounded in the distance, and the two couldn't help but turn their attention to it. They saw a brilliant flashing light. Several various colored balls of light were pounding against the black light barrier, dissolving it in the blink of an eye to reveal a ring, a small sword and a spell flag, the three of the devil's devilified treasures. However, their devilish light had grown thin, appearing to have received heavy damage. As the elder devil was completely focused on Han Li, he had completely overlooked senior martial brother Cheng's party. Although these three cultivators were all early nascent soul cultivators, they possessed much battle experience and employed their own secret techniques to break through the restrictions constraining their treasures. But when they saw the elder devil's strange shifting movements from a moment ago, they felt their hearts tremble. Rather than take the initiative to draw close to Han Li, they simply directed their treasures to attack the devil from a distance, hoping that it would provide a distraction. But the three clearly understood that Han Li would be the main force in dealing with him. If Han Li were to fall, the three would be left helpless. Han Li was delighted that the three were able to provide some assistance at this time. It would be fantastic if they gave him enough time to place down the aureate sword formation. With that thought, Han Li took another look at the elder devil and saw that he took another look at Han Li as the treasures streaked towards him. The ghost head's eyes flickered and he sinisterly smiled before disappearing in a series of after-images. Han Li's heart stirred and he quickly swept his bright sight spirit eyes around him. He revealed shock by what he saw. "Not good. Be careful." Han Li shouted and immediately commanded his huge tortoise puppets to successive shoot beams of blue light near senior martial brother Cheng's party. The three were terrified and could only bitterly curse once they realized the elder devil abandoned his fight with Han Li for the time being and was heading for them. After having seen the many moves that Han Li had displayed, the blood devil sword in particular, the elder devil felt that he wouldn't be able to defeat Han Li in a short amount of time. Since the harassment from the three other cultivators would only serve to make things more troublesome, he decided to change course and get rid of the minor hindrance before dealing with his main opponent. Over 10 thick beams of light erupted around the three nascent soul cultivators, filling the air with a cold icy chi. A black silhouette flickered 30 meters near the three cultivators, followed by the appearance of the elder devil. Although the cultivators had already prepared themselves, they couldn't help but lose some of their composure from witnessing his abnormal speed. Fortunately, the three acted with great skill. Senior martial brother Cheng and the other old man raised their arms, summoning a fire-red fox and a large talisman. As for Daoist Heaven Crystal, he clutched his hands in an incantation gesture and his two malevolent puppets shot out of the group's barrier in a blur. Under the talisman's protection, the red fox charged alongside them. The talisman flew out of the barrier and erupted several times, producing a cloud of flames. The fox then leapt into the cloud and fused with it, instantly disappearing from sight. It appeared to be a rare spirit beast skilled in fire movement techniques. When the elder devil saw that the two puppets possessing an unordinary aura pounced at him, he expressionlessly clapped his four hands in pairs and they howled with sounds of tearing space as blinding black radiance appeared in his palms. The four hands grabbed onto the black light and each split off a portion, producing balls of brilliant black light into each hand before transforming into four strange black light blades. These blades of light were only about 2 feet long, and their tips were thick and warped like a dagger. But what was particularly strange was how the blade's body continued to vibrate and released an unending piercing screech as if warping the nearby space. In the instant the black blades took form, the devil's human head appeared anguished and his face grew deathly pale as if his body's blood essence had been vastly consumed. As for the devil's ghost head, his expression turned harsher as the black light blades trembled. Then in a gust of wind, he shot forward to the blue malevolent puppet. Of course, the puppet felt no fear. It spat out a large mist of grey yin-chi and swept it forward like a wave. The other puppet raised its arms and azure light flashed, shooting out over 10 threads of ice from its hands and disappearing into the mist in the blink of an eye. As for the scarlet puppet, it spat out yin-chi as well, and it released scarlet drills of light from its hands, launching another attack at the Elder Devil. At that moment, the roiling fire cloud had surged above the Elder Devil's head. The devil was now being attacked from 3 sides. The Elder Devil effortlessly waved his 4 arms, sending 4 twirling crescents from his blades. Then, the crescents overlapped to form 2 crosses and shrieked through the air, each heading towards a different puppet. As the Elder Devil was occupied with these attacks, a meter-large claw formed from the cloud of flames and quickly grabbed at the devil's ghost head with its long incisive nails. The azure threads of ice and scarlet drills emerged past the other side of the yin-chi and made their way to the Elder Devil's body. The Elder Devil's 4 arms stirred and the blades of light grew indistinct as they layered several waves of light together, creating a huge surging orb of black radiance. When the puppet's attacks contacted the orb, it immediately sucked in the attacks with a wail. In the blink of an eye, azure and red light burst as they were churned and shattered. When this happened, the claw of flame suddenly stopped in alarm and attempted to withdraw, but it was already too late. A whip of black light flashed by and completely blew away the claw. A mournful cry soon followed from the cloud of flames. A savage expression appeared on the ghost head and his black-purple tongue hung from his face, dripping with blood. Then with a low shout, the Elder Devil's body disappeared from sight and he appeared at the heart of the flame cloud. The flame cloud roiled, and soon, limbs and flesh of the fire-red fox scattered through the air. The 3 cultivators gaped when they saw the fire-red fox slain in an instant. Its master, the unfamiliar old man, appeared particularly pained at the sight of this. The Elder Devil wore an odd expression and his body disappeared once more. Then, black radiance flickered from the clouds of grey yin-chi, followed by 2 successive explosions. Daoist Heaven Crystal's expression dropped and he turned deathly pale. Without another thought, he swept his sleeve and blew away the yin-chi in a gust of wind. He found that his 2 puppets had shattered into pieces, leaving no trace of the Elder Devil behind. At that moment, none of the 3 could afford to mourn over their losses and could only glance around them in terror. They all took out additional treasures from their storage pouches and prepared themselves. They heard a series of spatial movements nearby where a black 100-meter-tall mountain appeared, Hanli's 1,000-fold mountain. It then fiercely smashed down. After seeing that the situation had turned desperate, he summoned it near them to temporarily provide them aid. Before the mountain fell onto the land below, a flicker of black light appeared underneath it, revealing the Elder Devil wearing an icy expression. He raised his 4 arms towards the sky and the 4 blades of light condensed into a ball before taking the form of a 3-meter-tall black blade with an edge that roared with thunder. Holding the blade with 2 hands, he chopped towards the bottom of the mountain and a thin black crescent of light silently shot out from the black blade. The bottom of the mountain erupted in blinding light and the entire mountain wavered. A sleek and glossy crack began to appear at its center. The crack gradually spread upward until the entire mountain was split into 2. The 2 halves then fell, off from its mark. The Elder Devil didn't stop there. He glanced at the cultivator's multi-layered barrier with a hostile expression and raised his huge black blade. He waved it and released another thin black crescent. The 3 cultivators had turned completely pale and exchanged a glance of terror with one another. It was clear that the barrier wouldn't be able to endure such a formidable attack. Their bodies began to glow with light and they took off in different directions, leaving the barrier behind. Senior Marshal Brother Cheng flew straight towards Han Li. As for Daoist Heaven Crystal and the other old man, they flew towards Wei Wuya's side. Not good. Given the terrifying speed of the Elder Devil, Han Li knew that things would not end well. But since he was currently using this opportunity to complete the final steps to lay down the Aureate sword formation, he wasn't able to personally save them. As he quickly released a syringe of spell seals around him, all he could do was command his 12 tortoise puppets to shoot out icicles from their back. They wouldn't be able to injure the Elder Devil, but they would be able to obstruct his path and give the 3 cultivators an opportunity to escape. Chapter 852, Wreaking Havoc. The black crescent of light sliced through the multilayered barrier as if it were chopping through grass, resulting in the barrier to burst into specks of dust. When the elder devil saw the three escaping from the barrier, he looked at them with derisive mockery. As the 1,000 icicles from Han Li's tortoise puppets pelted the surrounding area, the elder devil swung the huge blade with a blur of his hands, forming another ball of blinding radiance and splitting it to release 2 3-meter-long black lances. He successively threw them into the air, sending one towards the unfamiliar old man while the other made its way to Senior Marshal Brother Cheng. Soon, Han Li's tortoise puppets pelted the surrounding area with over 1,000 icicles. But with a loud shriek, the 2 black lances disappeared without a trace. As for the elder devil, his body blurred and reappeared 70 meters away, instantly escaping the range of the icicles. At that moment, the unfamiliar old man heard a shriek from behind and felt his heart froze. Without another thought, he tossed out a silver octagon medallion he was keeping in reserve and formed a barrier of silver light around him. Having done this, he felt somewhat safer and hastily turned his head around to see that nothing was there. The unfamiliar old man blankly stared at the scene. Before he even realized what was going on, a shriek sounded out right next to him. As black light flashed, his black lance suddenly rammed into the barrier. Black and silver radiance momentarily intertwined, and the black lance warped, piercing through the barrier and burrowing itself in the unfamiliar old man's abdomen. It ruptured. Before the old man could even scream, he was already dead, filling the nearby air with bits of his corpse. A silver ball of light then emerged where he originally stood, his nascent soul. It appeared in complete disbelief of what had just happened. In that moment of delay, the black threads of light remaining from the eruption condensed into a net and instantly caught the nascent soul. The nascent soul revealed an expression of terror and it hastily formed an incantation gesture. It wildly flickered with silver light, disappearing in a display of instant movement. But when the nascent soul reappeared, it ran into the net and the net tightly shrunk back, quickly suspending the nascent soul in a ball of black light. As for the other black lance, it had arrived at Senior Marshal Brother Cheng's back in that very moment. As Senior Marshal Brother Cheng had yet to recover his strength from his last battle at the Dreamcloud Mountains, he was even less capable of dealing with this bizarre attack. He could only curse in his heart and prepare to materialize his nascent soul in order to escape. But at that moment, a spatial fluctuation appeared behind Senior Marshal Brother Cheng and a 3-meter-long crimson sword light shot into the Black Lancer's path. The sword light was blood red and was filled with an evil chi. The crimson sword light chopped at the Black Lance, halting it as the black and red light overlapped in confrontation. Then, they disappeared in a violent explosion. Senior Marshal Brother Cheng then quickly flew towards Han Li with delight. With a deathly pale complexion, Han Li lowered the Blood Devil sword and gave his Senior Marshal Brother Cheng a forced smile. Senior Marshal Brother Cheng displayed obvious gratitude and arrived at Han Li's side at the greatest speed he could muster. Unfortunately for Daoist Heaven Crystal, there was no one to save him. When he saw the unfamiliar old man's nascent soul became trapped nearby, he turned pale and mustered even more speed. But at that moment, the 2-headed elder devil appeared in a blur. Daoist Heaven Crystal felt his heart drop and immediately spat out a small crystal sword. Under the command of a spell seal, the sword transformed into a barrage of brilliant white sword lights. The elder devil's body strangely warped as soon as the sword lights approached him and disappeared from sight. Daoist Heaven Crystal's heart sank and his body glowed with light, intent on escaping. But just as he began to move, the light barrier protecting him greatly trembled as muffled thumps reverberated from it. At that moment, he lost control of the magic power in his body and came to a sudden stop. Not good. With terror on Daoist Heaven Crystal's face, his protective barrier ruptured, followed by a jet-black claw piercing into his abdomen, ripping out the nascent soul from his dantian before it could materialize. The elder devil withdrew his arm from Daoist Heaven Crystal's limp corpse, only for it to burn into ashes by a black devilish flame a moment later. Daoist Heaven Crystal's nascent soul was completely shaken with fear, but it acquired a chance to escape when the elder devil had relaxed his grip. In that moment, the nascent soul rejoiced and without another thought, it glowed with white light, about to instantly escaping over 30 meters away. But before he could complete the instant movement, the elder devil's ghost head sneered and opened his mouth. A purple blur shot out and bore into the nascent soul's body, the ghost head's tongue. It dragged Daoist Heaven Crystal's nascent soul into his gaping mouth. He chewed several times, and the ghost head's face pulsed with black light, revealing an expression of satisfaction. Afterwards, he beckoned to the trapped nascent soul nearby, and it also shot into his mouth. With these two nascent souls devoured, he felt the power of his soul greatly increasing. He then calmly turned around to look at Han Li and Senior Marshal Brother Cheng. He withdrew his extended tongue with a flick and revealed hunger on his face. When Senior Marshal Brother Cheng saw Daoist Heaven Crystal and his good friend devoured by the Elder Devil, his face contorted in fear. He knew very well that if he hadn't flown in Han Li's direction and if Han Li hadn't acted to assist him, he would have also met the same fate. These nascent soul cultivators at the peak of the outside world were all dealt away in a single blow by this monstrous existence. Inconceivable. For Han Li to have tangled with the devil for so long at only a slight disadvantage was a display of his immense abilities. His decision to rope in Han Li into the sect was only proven more correct as time went on. As distress filled Senior Marshal Brother Cheng's mind, he couldn't help but take a look at Han Li. Han Li's expression turned gloomy, but he was completely calm. He had already laid down the Aureate sword formation, and the rise in his battle strength had bolstered his confidence as well. He glanced at the main Elder Devil's battle a kilometer away and saw that it was steadily ongoing. He saw a pitch-black devil flame that reached out a kilometer wide and surrounded Wei Wuya's green cloud, slowly refining and weakening it. The poison cloud that was originally 50 meters wide was now only a third of its size and was on the verge of collapse. Ancestor Linghu and the white-clothed woman were still safe for the time being inside the green cloud, but they were forced to resist the devil flames by using their own treasures to their utmost power.
Han Li Noir Li Siga.
He knew Wei Wuya and the others wouldn't last long. However, he couldn't afford to take them into consideration. He was forced to only focus on dealing with the two-headed Elder Devil in front of him. He would have to see if he could use the Aureate formation to slay him first. At that moment, the two-headed Elder Devil began to calmly fly towards him. Han Li narrowed his eyes and he wordlessly raised his hand, releasing a jade talisman. A black ghost hand appeared in a flicker of light and moved to grab the oncoming Elder Devil. At that moment, Han Li swept his sleeve and summoned several tens of azure flying swords. They rang out, condensing in a pulse of brilliant azure light into a single huge blade that released an astonishing pressure. Han Li formed an incantation gesture and pointed at the Elder Devil. The huge sword then disappeared in a blur and suddenly appeared above the devil's head, cleaving downward without delay. The Elder Devil laughed with an odd tone and clapped his hands together, summoning a huge black blade. He then met the oncoming azure sword with his own. When the Elder Devil saw the azure sword, he immediately realized it was one of Han Li's bonded magic treasures and intended on shattering it, crippling Han Li's soul. As for the ghost claw, the devil disdainfully raised one of his hands and shot a stream of devilish chi at it, instantly tying it down and preventing it from moving in the slightest. The ghost claw attempted to tear the devilish chi apart, but it was no use. The devilish chi was like maggots. Whenever it split, it would form once more and stronger. Then, the black blade and the azure sword made contact, resulting in a deafening explosion. Black and azure radiance clashed in blinding confrontation. The black blade muffledly groaned and began to warp and ripple. As for the azure sword, it was being gradually pushed back, but it still remained in peak condition with the slightest damage. The two-headed Elder Devil raised his heads to look at the blade, and they both wore an expression of shock. Although Han Li didn't temper these bamboo cloudswarm swords for a significant amount of time, nor had he infused them with any auric essence, he had refined them with refined crystal, increasing their hardiness and durability far beyond ordinary magic treasures. Despite their somewhat lackluster strength, there were few things in this world that were able to break them. As a result, no matter how the devilish chi stirred the blade or the forms it took, invoking might that could break the greatest of blades, it wasn't able to break the combined bamboo cloudswarm swords. In that moment of delay, the azure sword suddenly rang with thunder and countless arcs of golden lightning shot out from it. When they made contact with the black blade quickly collapsed. Without anything blocking it, the huge lightning-covered sword fiercely chopped down at the Elder Devil's head. Chapter 853. trapping the devil. The elder devil didn't anticipate that the huge sword was made of golden lightning bamboo. In his alarm, he hastily fled. In a flicker of black light, he appeared over 30 meters away, and the condensed bamboo cloudswarm sword missed its mark. The devil stopped, and his expression suddenly turned sullen. He clapped his 4 hands together and condensed 2 balls of black radiance. The black light flickered, and the 2 balls of light transformed into 2 humming black lances. The devil grinded his fangs together and slat out 2 clouds of blood essence onto the black lances. They suddenly trembled and turned blood red. With this done, the devil's 2 heads appeared somewhat listless, as if having consumed a large amount of strength. At that moment, the huge azure sword reappeared above the devil's ghost head and chopped down without hesitation. The elder devil raised his arms and launched both of the blood-red lances towards the cleaving sword. 2 deafening booms sounded out as crimson radiance and golden lightning overlapped. The lances held firm against the huge sword and its divine devilbane lightning. Soon, the huge sword released a long wail and spun away several times as it was pushed back over 10 meters. Light violently flickered from the sword, and it became much dimmer. Han Li's complexion turned blood red from his connection with the sword and pale in another moment before soon returning to normal. The sword had suffered damage from its spiritual nature, and his soul had received of this damage as a result. Fortunately, his soul was immensely powerful, and this level of damage wasn't enough to influence him. However, Han Li didn't dare to allow this to continue, and he pointed to the huge sword. With a humming ring, it transformed into several tens of azure streaks, flying back towards his body. Seeing that the swords began to fly back, the devil harshly shouted, "Escaping? Those swords will be staying behind." Then he waved at the crimson lances, and in a flash of radiance, the crimson lances transformed into 2 crimson hands. They quickly chased after the swords with wind shrieking behind them. Since he saw Han Li recklessly released so many of his golden lightning bamboo magic treasures, he naturally couldn't allow Han Li to easily retrieve them. He then spun and surrounded himself in a large cloud of devilish chi before shooting after them in close pursuit. When Han Li saw this, he inwardly rejoiced, but betrayed none of this emotion on his face. When Senior Marshal Brother Cheng saw this, he felt ill at ease standing idle, and he summoned a small yellow sword in his hand, intending on providing Han Li some support. Before he launched his flying sword, he suddenly heard a voice transmission from Han Li. "Senior Marshal Brother Cheng, there is no need to act now. Wait until after the devil is trapped." The old man was stunned by this, and after some thought, he immediately stopped his actions, feeling a great sense of relief. At that moment, the large crimson hands had nearly overtaken the azure sword lights and were only growing faster by the second. Seeing the 2 crimson hands increasingly fervent pursuit to sweep up the swords, Han Li calmly launched a series of spell seals at them. The mess of flying swords released a resonating ring and suddenly binded together into a cloud of chi, and they began to rush through the air, increasing their speed several times. The 2 crimson hands ended up missing their mark as the small azure swords had arrived above Han Li and began to revolve in the air. The elder devil was enraged by this turn of action. It was as if Han Li was deliberately playing with him. The devil's expression deeply sank, and he beckoned to the large crimson hands. The claws flew back and spiraled around him before flying into his hands as 2 crimson sabers. Then, a harsh whistle sounded out from the devil's mouth, and over 30 meters of devilish chi gathered together without warning and suddenly surged towards Han Li. The devil disappeared from sight, concealed within the mist. Han Li frowned when he saw the roiling devilish chi charge towards him. He raised his hands, and golden arcs of lightning began to flicker across his arms, creating a large net of lightning to intercept the devilish chi. Then his eyes flickered with blue light, and he swept his gaze across it. But immediately after, Han Li revealed an expression of shock. There was no trace of the elder devil within it. He then raised his head up towards the sky and also found nothing there. Han Li was stunned, and he touched his chin. His expression immediately changed when he thought of something. He immediately grabbed onto Senior Marshal Brother Cheng's arm and immediately took off. At that moment, 2 streaks of crimson light flashed where Han Li originally stood, and the elder devil appeared 10 meters below. The devil's heads wore an expression of surprise. He believed his sneak attack had a complete certainty of success. Han Li inwardly cursed at the wicked ruthlessness of the elder devil. He actually thought to attack them from below. Were it not for his quick response or the bright sight spirit eyes, he would have been cleaved into two. His own protective armor made from the tricolored beetles and his light barrier couldn't have withstood such a vicious strike. To the side, Senior Marshal Brother Cheng was dripping with sweat and his mind was filled with lingering fear. The elder devil stood in place and saw Han Li's expression changed several times. The devil sinisterly smiled as he looked at him and his silhouette blurred, shooting forward in a black streak of light. Han Li smiled at the sight of this. The black streak shot 10 meters out before golden light blossomed in front of it. An unremarkable golden thread appeared and flickered across it. With a light bang, two of the crimson sabers appeared in front of the black streak, suddenly blocking the golden thread that had appeared. But a muffled thump sounded out and the black streak was knocked 3 meters back. The elder devil unsteady figure was revealed, his heads both displaying shock. The golden thread then mysteriously disappeared. It was clear that the elder devil had finally been trapped within the aureate sword formation. At that moment, Han Li formed an incantation seal with his hands and he willed the aureate sword formation to reveal itself. Countless bewitching golden threads intermittently flickered all around the elder devil. They were entirely silent as they slowly grew closer towards the center. The elder devil's expression turned harsh, realizing that he had fallen for Han Li's trap, entering some sort of unknown restriction. In fury and alarm, he waved his sabers, launching several overlapping saber streaks towards Han Li's position. Several tens of golden threads flickered intermittently in their path, cutting the crimson streaks into countless segments and scattering them into specks of light. The elder devil was stunned and wore a solemn expression. He coldly snorted and brought the crimson sabers together. Then in a blinding flicker of light, they condensed into a single huge blade. He held it with all 4 of his arms and began to slice it through the air at an exceptionally slow speed. The huge blade shining with blinding crimson radiance, it released a 3-meter-long crescent that emitted an suffocating pressure. This huge blade of radiance streaked 30 meters away before encountering a dense net of golden threads. The streak of radiance was able to make it a meter past the threads of light before thoroughly collapsing apart. The elder devil was deeply alarmed. The golden threads appeared in all directions and were slowly closing in on him. Even with only using the aureate sword formation once before, Han Li was now far more skillful in using it. Senior Marshal Brother Cheng was delighted to see this. He was unaware Han Li possessed such unfathomable abilities. At the center of the formation, the elder devil began to use various movement techniques in an attempt to escape the formation, from turning into threads of black chi to thin black lines. However, all of these attempts were unable to make it past the golden threads with no exceptions. He even split the huge blade into 4 long and slender ones, fluttering them together to form a crimson ball of light to protect himself as he charged forward. As a result, he was nearly cut into pieces by the incisive threads of golden light. Even at the crimson light's greatest strength, it was only able to block the golden threads temporarily. The aureate sword formation continued to close and the golden threads drew closer to the elder devil. When they were only about 10 meters away from the elder devil, he raised his heads towards the sky and shrieked, one shriek coarse and deep, the other soft and high.
Han Li unconsciously frowned.
As he pondered about what he intended to do, he suddenly heard a similar shriek from the main elder devil which was emerged in devil fire a kilometer away. Afterwards, a huge silhouette shot out from the devil fire and made its way towards Han Li's direction. Wrapped in pitch-black devil flames, a similar 2-headed 4-armed devil had appeared, but its body was over 20 meters tall. His speed was immensely quick and he would soon arrive at Han Li's position in mere moments. Han Li's expression largely changed. At that moment, he heard Senior Marshal Brother Cheng shout in relief, Junior Marshal Brother Han. Our reinforcements have arrived. Han Li was stunned and he turned his gaze into the distance. He saw 2 flickers of light over the horizon. There were 2 groups of cultivators heading in their direction. Han Li then completely extinguished the thought of escaping. With one of the elder devils trapped in his sword formation and the other quickly charged to help him, he came to an immediate decision and pointed to the purple flame bird that had been continuously revolving above his head. It spread out its wings and flew towards the approaching elder devil. He then flipped his other hand and took out the blood devil sword. With his other hand, a crimson talisman appeared in his palm in a flicker of crimson light. It had a scarlet flood dragon that roamed across its surface. It was the spirit subjugation talisman that he spent much effort refining. Although he had made use of the talisman at the battle at the Heavenly South's border, he had only used it for a short amount of time, consuming only a third of its power. With the talisman taken out, he slapped it onto his body. In a flicker of scarlet light, the talisman disappeared without a trace, and a huge flood dragon suddenly appeared above Han Li's body. It was 30 meters tall, and its body was a rich scarlet, looking exactly the same as the original form of the Grade 8 venomous flood dragon. After the flood dragon appeared, it released a world-shaking cry, causing the color of the nearby sky to distort. This sound greatly surprised the both of the elder devils. Senior Marshal Brother Cheng also appeared at a complete loss. Chapter 854. An alarming surprise. As the flood dragon's roar faded away, its image spiraled once in the air before disappearing into Han Li's back. Crimson light glowed behind him, and suddenly the image of a 3-inch-long crimson flood dragon began to roam across his body with vivid life. Then Han Li's body began to pulse with crimson light, and thumb-sized sparkling crimson scales appeared all over. Following a sharp pain from the top of his head, a small scarlet horn appeared, and his hands turned incredibly hardy, and his fingers became pointed and incisively sharp. At first glance, Han Li's new form appeared similar to the elder devil trapped in the sword formation. However, Han Li's face remained human, and the scales were only present on his body. As for the elder devil's head, both of their heads appeared malevolent, and his scales were purple. Han Li's use of the spirit subjugation talisman had also boosted his true essence with the power of the flood dragon's soul, and raised his cultivation to the border of early and mid-nascent soul stage. With his body glowing in both azure and red light, he grabbed the blood devil sword with both his hands and poured the entirety of his magic power into it. The sword began to intensely tremble and violently pulse with crimson light before expanding to 3 meters in length, filling the air with the putrid smell of blood. As for Han Li's red horn, it glowed a brilliant crimson as a result of using the power of the flood dragon's soul to its greatest extent. With the minor elder devil trapped inside the sword formation, Han Li had resolved himself to prevent the main elder devil from rescuing his counterpart and fusing into one to bring forth an even greater adversary. But with the main devil's speed, he would arrive before the sword formation closed in on the minor devil and finished him off. His only choice would be to personally slay the minor devil. Once this was done, he would flee, as there was no way he could withstand the might of the main elder devil. Although there would be dire consequences for using the blood devil sword, including great damage to his true essence, he already decided that he wouldn't be involved in this battle much longer. With the minor devil slain, he would immediately flee and have the other cultivators deal with the stronger devil. Otherwise, he could experience permanent damage to his cultivation. Given that he had slain one of the devils by himself, the other cultivators surely wouldn't have any complaints. But at that moment, the blood devil sword seemed to be insatiable. In the blink of an eye, it had already consumed a majority of what Han Li's cultivation could offer. The sword's crimson light continuously pulsed and now extended to over 20 meters in length and condensed an even more powerful aura, much to Han Li's shock. When the minor elder devil saw this, he rigidly stared at the light extending from the sword, and a trace of fear appeared on his face. He wasn't able to keep his calm, and his ghost head harshly shouted, "Are you seeking your own death? For a human cultivator to use a sacred tool of our holy realm without regard? Are you thinking of turning into a devil?"
Han Li coldly smiled.
He simply continued to pour spiritual power into the sword and ignored him. The devil grew furious. Knowing that Han Li intended on taking his life, his expression turned gloomy and his body began to glow with crimson light. With one of his hands acting as a blade, he severed one of his arms. The wound was as sleek as a mirror and didn't leak even a drop of blood. In the moment the arm was severed, he grabbed it with another arm and he spat several mouthfuls of blood essence onto it as he muttered an ancient incantation. The severed arm immediately shined with crimson radiance and undergone a series of warping distortions before forming a sword that resembled the blood devil sword. The sword was made of sleek bone and was covered in pitch-black devilish chi. With a single wave, threads of devilish chi surged around it. The elder devil then brought the sword in front of him and began to pour the entirety of his body's devilish qi into the sword, causing it to surge with black radiance. When Han Li saw this, he was somewhat surprised, but at the same time, killing intent flooded his mind. Although he didn't know the might of this grotesquely formed sword, he couldn't afford to underestimate it in the slightest given its bizarre method of creation. Having come to this conclusion, he ceased pouring magic power into the Blood Devil sword. Then with his hands holding onto the trembling Blood Devil sword, he fiercely cut down towards the elder devil within the sword formation. He couldn't afford to give the devil the opportunity to make full use of the bone sword and immediately struck. A crimson 30-meter-long sword light cleaved downward towards the aureate sword formation. Before the sword light even arrived, the elder devil was submerged in the scent of blood. The air around the sword formation began to tremble and space even began to distort as an indescribable vibration shook their surroundings. The elder devil was overwhelmed with shock. This was clearly a full display of the sword's power. If he remembered correctly, tools from the Holy Realm were only able to be used at half strength by humans. Could it be this increase in strength had something to do with his transformed state? Although the devil had experienced many ancient battles, he had never experienced something as inconceivable as the spirit subjugation talisman. But now that his life was at risk, the devil had no choice but to raise the partially charged bone sword to meet the strike, both his heads loudly screaming. A black radiance that was only half the size of the crimson radiance shot out from the bone sword to meeting the oncoming streak of crimson radiance. Crimson and black light overlapped. A boom shook through the nearby air. Waves of qi surged from the point of contact like a storm. Senior Marshal Brother Cheng was blown back a dozen steps before he was able to stabilize himself. As for Han Li, he drew support from his increased cultivation and he merely blurred half a step back before steadying himself. The elder devil, however, was unaffected by the wave. He simply looked at the confrontation of sword light up above him with a nervous expression. A scene that surprised both Han Li and the devil's soul occurred. After the wave blew across them, a fist-sized jet-black ball strangely appeared in place of the overlapping sword lights. It then quickly warped in shape. In the blink of an eye, it lengthened to 15 meters long and reached a meter wide, stretching over the sword formation. Before Han Li understood what was happening, a large expanse of rainbow light appeared from the pitch-black object. Because of rainbow light's lightning-fast appearance and its close proximity, the minor elder devil and Han Li were enveloped by the rainbow light. Afterwards, a huge attractive force enveloped them into the black object. Senior Marshal Brother Cheng fortunately managed to avoid it, having flown back a dozen steps from the initial force. Not good. It's a spatial tear. Han Li realized what had happened and terror filled his mind as he attempted to break free of the rainbow light. But when Han Li attempted to utilize his magic power, his expression blanched. All of the magic power in his body had completely disappeared. Han Li broke out in a cold sweat. Inbound to be engulfed by the spatial tear, he beckoned to the bamboo cloudswarm swords comprising of the aureate sword formation in a panic. The minor elder devil also found himself without power and he revealed terror on his faces. As the rainbow light pulled Han Li and the elder devil into the spatial tear, they weren't able to offer the slightest resistance. Then a clear ring sounded out from the formation and over 100 streaks of golden sword light shot off in meter-long gold-red streaks towards the spatial tear. At that same moment, a violent and sharp explosion burst nearby. A ball of black devilish flame flickered and teleported in the vicinity of the spatial tear. Devilish flame surged and was promptly extinguished, revealing a towering figure reminiscent of a divine devil. When the elder devil saw that his counterpart was being dragged into the spatial tear, he felt both fury and alarm. As he floated nearby, not daring to enter range of spatial tear, he spotted the last of the bamboo cloudswarm swords that were flying towards Han Li and instantly grabbed at the air in their direction. A huge devilish hand then appeared above the flying swords and reached out to grab them. The swords released a clear ring and they immediately swerved, avoiding the hand and shooting straight towards the spatial tear. However, two of the swords were too slow and were grabbed by the devilish hand, rendering them immobile. At that moment, a purple ball of flame shrieked from an unknown place and instantly flew into the spatial tear as well. The giant elder devil was stunned and thought to do something else when the spatial tear blurred several times and quickly shrunk in size before disappearing without a trace. All that remained nearby was Senior Marshal Brother Cheng and the giant elder devil. The elder devil glanced in the direction that the spatial tier disappeared and his expression wavered. Then, he turned to look at Senior Marshal Brother Cheng, and a savage expression brimming with hostility appeared on his face. Senior Marshal Brother Cheng was alarmed, and he hastily used his yellow flying sword to protect himself as he slowly withdrew, screaming curses in his heart. He unconsciously glanced around him to reveal an expression of delight. Someone amongst a group of green-robed cultivators spoke from 300 meters away. "Yi, isn't this fellow Daoist Cheng? What are you doing here? And what is this devilish monster?" A green-robed old man glanced at the two-headed six-armed giant elder devil with shock. This old man was the controlling spirit sect's Grand Elder Dongmen Tu. The three behind him were his nascent soul cultivators formed from elemental spirit nascents. "That's right, I would like some answers as well." At that same moment, gloomy words sounded out, followed by a dozen black-robed cultivators, the Ghost Spirit Sect disciples. The speaker was the Ghost Spirit Sect's Elder Zhong. These two group of cultivators saw that spatial tier disappear, and all of them revealed an expression of shock. Senior Marshal Brother Cheng bitterly smiled and could only muster the strength to say, "It is too hard to explain. Let's first deal with this monster first. Do be extremely careful. This devil is immensely powerful. A moment of carelessness will result in death." Dongmen Tu and Elder Zhong both glanced at one another with a puzzled expression. The cultivators following them then immediately surrounded the 10-meter-tall devil from a distance. The elder devil's two ghost heads slowly turned around to examine the human cultivators that surrounded him. One of the faces sneered and emitted dense killing intent. As for the other face, it wore a mysterious smile containing a trace of derision. Without saying a word, he raised his hands to the sky and summoned 4 huge black blades of light into his hand. With a faint tremble, the huge blades released a deafening shriek. When Senior Marshal Brother Cheng saw this familiar scene, his expression grew unsightly. Chapter 855, Silver Flame. In the moment the spatial tier had engulfed him, Han Li was blinded by brilliant rainbow light and was forced to shut his eyes. Additionally, the sudden loss of magic power in his body had left him lightheaded and feeling extremely ill. If it wasn't for his flood dragon transformation, he believed he would have already been knocked unconscious. Han Li suddenly felt the spiritual power in his body stir once more, and his magic power was suddenly restored. With delight, spiritual light glowed from his body and he regained control, stabilizing himself. At that time, the nearby rainbow light intensely flickered several more times before disappearing and revealing his surroundings. Han Li swept his gaze around and his body instantly blurred, flying over 30 meters away. He had spotted the elder devil right next to him, causing him to jump away in fear. At that moment, Han Li was aware of the current situation without any need for examination. The spatial dimension they were located in was only about 100 meters wide and everything within was clear to see. Much to Han Li's disappointment, there were no others present apart from him and the elder devil. In the instant he moved, he suddenly discovered that the spiritual qi in the air was incredibly dense. There were also a few spiritual herbs and medicines growing around them, as well as a stone pavilion with an incomplete corridor. The walls of the spatial dimension were of impenetrable gray mist. The space he was currently in appeared to be an abandoned medicine garden. Han Li was shocked, but as of current, he was facing a great enemy and his life was at risk. Needless to say, now was not the time to investigate his surroundings. Azure light flowing across his body, Han Li coldly watched the elder devil. He clenched his hands into fists and golden lightning began to flicker across his body. At the same time, a ball of purple flames appeared above him and began to revolve around his head. The ball of purple apex flames had hurriedly rushed into the spatial tear after Han Li was engulfed, much to his relief. It would almost certainly prove to be invaluable in the coming battle. As for the elder devil, his faces revealed astonishment once he finished examining his surroundings. Then with a strange expression, he chuckled and said, "I didn't think that there would be a spatial remnant of a spirit ether garden. On the verge of calamity, I encountered great fortune." The elder devil wildly howled and then stopped when his head strangely turned to look at Han Li. Han Li coldly snorted and his sleeve trembled, shooting out several tens of golden flying swords out that transformed into a blur of swords in front of him. But much to his shock, he discovered that he was missing 2 of his auric essence refined bamboo cloudswarm swords. These flying swords were bound to his soul, but at the moment, he couldn't feel their presence. It appeared that the 2 swords had not entered the spatial tear alongside him. He couldn't help but wryly laugh in his mind. It would have been fine if it had been any of his other magic treasures, but his bamboo cloudswarm swords were a set, and without those 2 swords, he wasn't able to employ the aureate sword formation, greatly decreasing their peak combat potential. Helplessness filling his heart, he pointed to the swords in front of him, drawing support to protect himself from the power of the spirit subjugation talisman and the divine devilbane lightning. When the elder devil saw Han Li readying himself, he drew back his lips and flicked his tongue with a sinister expression. Devilish qi then surged from his body, and in the blink of an eye, he had enveloped a majority of the spatial dimension with roiling devil qi and filled it with yin winds. Han Li deeply sighed and summoned all of the remaining divine devilbane lightning. His body glowed with golden light, releasing over 100 arcs of golden lightning that condensed together to form several bowl-thick flood dragons. The lightning flood dragons swirled around Han Li and roared at the sky in a display of strength. "You still have so much divine devilbane lightning?" The elder devil blurted out with astonishment, but he soon coldly chuckled and wordlessly raised his hands. 2 gusts of yin winds suddenly flew out from his hands and fused with the devilish qi in the air to form countless black tentacles of varying different sizes. Although Han Li's divine devilbane lightning was able to restrain devilish qi, it wouldn't be able to overcome such an overwhelming amount. Han Li and the elder devil both realized this, and Han Li's expression turned unsightly. But what most distressed him was that his own blood shadow evasion was useless within the spatial dimension, so he had no choice but to fight. The elder devil harshly shouted, and all of the tentacles suddenly coiled and then charged towards Han Li with overbearing pressure. Han Li resolved himself, and the golden lightning flood dragons coiling around his body roared as they met the swarm of tentacles. As for the ball of purple flame, Han Li willed it to become a wall in front of him. As the battle erupted, the spatial dimension suddenly started trembling and loudly groaned. Glaring white light suddenly shined from the sky before soon turning silver. Han Li and the elder devil both paused their attacks from shock. The clouds in the sky began to violently surge, transforming into roiling silver flames. Then with a roaring boom, a huge beam of silver light shot out from the flames at the elder devil's location. With the elder devil at the center, a huge pillar of silver light erupted, clearing away all of the devilish qi it touched. Han Li then caught sight of the elder devil's expression of terror before being burned away with silver flames and turning into ash. The pillar of light then erupted and countless silver embers flooded the spatial dimension, wiping away all the devilish qi present. As for where the elder devil had originally stood, all that remained were utterly destroyed magic treasures. With all traces of the elder devil destroyed, the silver flames quickly withdrew and the grey mist returned to normal. Only Han Li was left, with an expression of complete and utter disbelief. Silver flames. This ferocious restriction doesn't seem to be something from the mortal realm. How surprising. While Han Li was at a complete loss, he suddenly heard the monarch of Soul Divergence's voice from the back of his head. "What do you mean? Where did those silver flames come from?" Han Li snapped out of his stupor and his face was filled with delight. That formidable enemy had been slain without any risk to his life. He then swept his hand and recalled his golden lightning, purple flames, and flying swords. The monarch of Soul Divergence kept silent for a moment before sighing. Given its power to easily eliminate the elder devil, it clearly wasn't something that came from our mortal realm. Those silver flames sought out evil qi and only targeted the elder devil, which only leaves the cultivators from the spirit realm. It seems that the ancient cultivators' eventual triumph over the elder devils was due to the interference of cultivators from the spirit realm. Han Li's heart stirred when he heard this. Senior means to say that the masters of this spatial dimension were spirit realm cultivators. With his voice filled with emotion, the monarch of Soul Divergence said, "That's right. This should be the ruins of one of the renowned spirit ether gardens from antiquity. I heard that in times long past, vastly powerful cultivators were able to draw support from a few treasures to open up a small spatial dimension to grow spiritual medicines using spiritual qi that far surpassed that from the mortal realm. These gardens were specialized in growing all sorts of rare spiritual herbs. However, there was some unforeseen mishap and all of the spirit ether gardens disappeared without a trace and future cultivators were no longer able to find them. I didn't think that Devilfall Valley possessed one. However, this particular spirit ether garden seems to have shattered for some reason. This should only be a small portion of the original. A spirit ether garden. I've seen records of them before, but I only thought of it as a rumor. I didn't think they truly existed. Han Li muttered as he excitedly glanced around him. A short time later, his gaze dropped down to the magic tools that the Elder Devil had left behind. He then pointed to them and they flew into his hands in streaks of light. After he glanced at them, he frowned with a trace of sadness. These treasures had been corrupted by devilish qi and were completely purged by the silver flames. Their spiritual nature was thoroughly destroyed. Even if they were further refined, they wouldn't be able to show even a fraction of their original strength. Han Li shook his head but casually placed the items in his storage pouch. Then, his body glowed with crimson light and he withdrew the spirit subjugation talisman. The talisman quickly flew out from his body and into his hand. Han Li examined it and muttered, "This spirit subjugation talisman can only be used one more time. I've only been able to use it a few times." Afterwards, Han Li floated to the ground and his sleeve trembled. A small snow-white fox flew out and flickered with white light, transforming into Silver Moon. Silver Moon curtsied to Han Li and chuckled, saying, "I originally believed that Master would have summoned me to assist in the last battle. I didn't think that you would call me now. Your cultivation is too low to have been of any use in that battle. However, you are proficient in movement techniques. Help me search the area and see if there are any hidden mechanisms or restrictions." "As you command." Silver Moon nodded and her body disappeared into the ground in a flash of silver light. Han Li then sat cross-legged on the ground and closed his eyes, slowly spreading out his spiritual sense to examine every inch of the spatial dimension and see if there were any secrets contained within. Han Li's expression was completely calm, but after making no discoveries, he betrayed a trace of disappointment. After a moment more, his eyelids moved and he suddenly revealed an odd expression before opening his eyes. He immediately stood up and excitedly moved to a corner of the spatial dimension where there were tensome purple berries growing from an odd plant.